Alright folks, so this is the front to rear brake line, the original style line for my 59 Edsel here, and it runs all the way back. And then somebody's gonna splice the union in here at some time or another. So we got a union right here, and then it almost would have to be originally a union there, because the way it goes over the frame, it goes from the exterior part of the frame to the interior of the frame, and then it goes to the rear brake hose on the rear end. But maybe it did have one there originally, but it had another union once it crossed over the frame, and another union back here, which that's definitely not correct, but it might have had this one. But this is the original brake line, this part on up. So that is the original brake line. It's a 3/16 brake line. If I haven't mentioned that already, all the brake lines on a 59 Edsel, at least on this one, are a 3/16 brake line. That's all there is to it. And this is the original line, and it's got a little bit of it looks like it's a little bigger right in here in diameter, but it's actually a shield kind of that goes over it. Get a close-up view of it. But it's a 3/16 brake line, and a union ties in right here. And I'll throw in the union there, and then I'll have another line tied in from the union to the rear brakes on the brake master cylinder. So we'll have that there, and then it's got like a little shield right in here, because it looks like it's a 1/4-inch brake line, but it's not. It comes all the way down here, stops, and then the rest of it's a 3/16 brake line. And if you're wondering what all this stuff is on it, the brake line itself actually is not that bad. It looks like it's rusted, corroded, and brittle and everything else, which I'm not gonna lie, it is a little brittle, but it's actually fairly solid for as old as it is. But you know, we're not using it again, and we'll make the car safe. But it's actually undercoating. That's what a lot of this junk is on here. It's just undercoating. Sometime or another, I noticed that about the Edsels. I don't know if that was a later thing, like if they were all undercoated from the factory and it was just something they did at the factory, or if it was a later thing that somebody took the car up sometime later in its life and undercoated it. I mean, they undercoated it. I don't think a factory would do that. They undercoated it all over the brake line and the fuel line, and it's probably the only thing that actually saved them lines. I mean, some of them it was so caked with undercoating you couldn't even hardly see them, but this wasn't too bad to get off. I took my new 3/16 brake line and got it close. I mean, it's not, 100%, but needs some tweaking still, but got it, fairly close there. Go ahead and get this thing to focus. I'm going to make a slightly different modification up here. We're going to kind of lose that little curl right there. Oh, apologize. Camera flipping. We're going to ditch this and extend this out just a little bit so I can go around the steering box and not have to fight going, but rather than going in behind it. It's not going to hurt nothing, so I am going to do that. And it'll just make it easier to get to the union to tie in the brake lines for the rear brakes. So I got this pretty close. It's not too far off. I mean, comes on down, got it bent up a little bit off right in there, a little bit high, and comes on down. We got it pretty close in here. Hold it still. Pretty close there. It's off worse than what it is. There you go. Yeah, that just looks a little better. Tiny bit off right in here. It comes on up. I can hold it still. Comes on up, and there it is. The end of it right here. So we'll have to put a union right here. It's just no way around it. I don't like unions. I really don't, because when you want as much of a one-piece brake line as possible. You don't want a bunch of fittings in it, any chance it leaking, and it's just not really good to do that. But it's no choice, we're gonna have to do that. And it's no hole whatsoever in the frame to run it through the frame or anything, so it's Originally, I believe that's the way it did run. It actually had a union there, and then it had another line. There was another union behind this line here once it crossed over to the interior of the frame. But I know that's not correct because somebody bent that line up. And that was not me, but so I know that's not correct. So we're pretty much putting all new brake lines on this thing, except for the ones on the rear end. And those were replaced already. I'm not going to disturb them because there's nothing wrong with them. But this is how much brake line I got left. So it was a 25-foot roll of 3/16 brake line. It came with all these fittings you see here. There's 4 or 5 right there, and 6, 7, 8, 9. I think it's like 9, maybe 10 fittings, and it's got these little longer ones too. So all this for, you know, I think it's like $30. I mean, it's a heck of a deal. So I'm gonna flare this end up. I got a good old Eastwood. Yep, good old Eastwood double flaring tool. So I'm gonna double flare all this. That's where they were originally. There's just regular old double flares. So I'll probably trim this down a little bit. We'll try this brake line on to get it kind of really close, and then we'll probably have to pull it off 50 million times until we get it, you know, 100% perfect, and then we'll finally flare it up. Another thing you like to do too, little tip out there, is putting brake lines on anything, not just the Edsel, but anything. Take a little piece of tape or cap or something and tape these ends off so you don't get a bunch of dirt in your brake lines like it. You know, you spend all this time doing this, and you know, put a little piece of tape on them until you're ready to flare them. That way you don't get a bunch of dirt on them. And you want to blow them out too. Make sure you do blow these out before you flare them and after you flare them. That way it's any burrs or any metal or anything like that from flaring them or cutting them, or, you know, vice versa. You don't have contaminated and have a bunch of trash in your brake lines. You don't want to be, you know, bleeding the brakes out and pushing all that trash through and force it through your wheel cylinders and master cylinder and all that stuff, and, you know, you create a bunch of other problems and then not bleed right. But if you're wondering about a proportion valve, as far as I know, now correct me if I'm wrong, I don't really think it's a reason to have one, to be honest, because all the T-fitting, where it splits off to the driver's side and the passenger side and goes to the rear part closest to the firewall on your master cylinder, it's just a regular T-fitting. And the distribution blocks that I looked up, they're the exact same thing. It is no check valve in it. I know on the C10 it is no check valve in that distribution block at all. So it's not like an actual proportion valve, it's just a distribution block is all it is. It just splits off the fluid and sends it to the driver's side front wheel, passenger side front wheel, and it's designed so that the front brakes and the rear brakes are completely, entirely separate from each other. That's the whole point in having a dual master cylinder. And as far as I know, it is no check valve in it. This truck does not have one, and my Chevelle does not have one. I think it actually has a low pressure warning light for the idiot light in the dash, but other than that, I do not believe it is no check valve in there. Now on a disc brake setup, then yes it is, but that's what I wanted to point out there. So yes, this is a C10, you know, but it's the same concept. So basically what I'm saying, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see a need for a proportional valve for the original style 4-wheel drum brakes. I don't think that's really going to be necessary. I mean, it stopped fine before, so I'm not going to put one on there. I would check and do your research on that, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a need for it. Now, when I do a 4-wheel disc brake swap, it will be needed. It will be needed. But that'll be later on. But I figured I would show this. And when you're doing brake lines, you want to take this little tool here. Once you cut it, split it, that's why they make this end like this. You keep tightening it up and keep, you know, going round and round and round and round and round. Doesn't matter which way you spin it. You could spin it clockwise, counterclockwise, you know, that doesn't matter. But they make this little tool right here, just like that, so you can get inside this brake line and spin this around. I'll do it on the old one. Can't really do it one-handed. But you spin this around and around and around and around and around inside this brake line here, so it cleans all the burrs out. That's what that's for. And then I usually take either a file or a piece of sandpaper like what I got here. It's kind of rough, but hopefully you get the concept. And I very lightly, very, very lightly, I'll come in on the edges here and clean these edges off. Of course, we get this camera to focus off. Clean all the edges all the way around it and just barely touch the end of it. Make sure it's flat, and then that way it'll flare up nice and beautiful. But I got the Eastwood tool. It's really nice, 3-step tool. Just install the brake line, put it on operation 0, and then it lines everything up. Once you pull the handle back, and then you turn to operation 1, make sure it's for the correct size, 3/16. Turn that to 3/16, and then you pull the handle again. That's a bubble flare. Let go of the handle, turn it to operation 2, and then to create your double flare, and then you pull it again, and then let go, and then you take it out, and then you check it, make sure it's flared straight, not crooked or anything like that. You're good to go. But this is not really a how-to or anything. This is just to help Edsel owners out there make some brake lines for your Edsel here. So it looks better like it. It's not perfect, but we could tweak it a little bit. 3/16 is very easy to bend up. Don't really have any trouble with it, but I got to do a little bit more tweaking on it, straighten it up, and I think it'll be pretty good. That's a front to rear brake line. I got to make one more that goes from the interior of the frame to the rear brake hose for our rear end and our rear brakes, and I think we'll be good. Excuse me, actually I had to make 2 more brake lines after that one. I'll have to make that one that goes to the rear brake hose, and then I'll have to make another one that goes from the union that ties in the front to rear brake line to the front part of the master cylinder. Now I'm going to try and create a little curl in it, so it's got a little spring in it. So that, I mean, is it really necessary? Probably not, but I'm just trying to do it the right way. Rotations there. I'll create that little curl there. That way it's got a little spring to it, so that the brake lines, you know, you don't hit a bunch of bumps and everything. It's got a little spring there, so that it doesn't break them off, and or they, you know, just come anything like that. The Durango had them from the factory. They were curled like that, so I was kind of trying to create there's that little curl kind of design. And I see my master cylinder's kind of looking a little low right there, but so I got to create that. I'll probably do the same thing to the rear brakes. Just remember, rear brakes is the front, the back is always your front brakes. Always remember that. The bigger chamber on this Ford master cylinder, some of the Dodges and Plymouths are like this too. You got front brakes, rear brakes, front brakes, rear brakes. Remember that. Make sure you tie them in correctly. I had them backwards on here. They worked, but I don't think it really, honestly, truly matters, because it's still a 1-inch bore and it's a 1-inch piston. But you know, you want to do it right. But I threw a little paint on that water pump. I got tired of looking at Ford red, and yeah, it definitely ain't perfect, but I ain't worried about it. It looks much better. So threw some semi-gloss black on that water pump. Threw a little bit on the thermostat housing too. The thermostat is one of a kind for this car. They're bigger in diameter, if I haven't made a video about that. So you can't just buy any old thermostat. You gotta buy a special one. It's a bigger diameter, much bigger diameter thermostat. You can't buy a regular one. It'll just fall right through. But yeah, I did that. I threw a little semi-gloss on there. See, I gotta miss this little spot right in there. I'll have to spray that. But looks like I missed a spot there too, and there. But that's okay. But yeah, I threw a little bit of black on there. I got tired of looking at Ford red, and eventually I'm gonna paint this motor all back well, as close as you can get correct colors anyway, except for the valve covers. Debating on running chrome ones, or either I'm gonna paint them back white, one of the two, I don't know yet. But I'm gonna paint it all back original for now, and I just got tired of looking at that Ford red. I got nothing against Ford red, but it just looks goofy looking. Now it's, you know, it makes it look a little bit better under here. But that ain't gonna last. Half foot will probably burn off another half foot as soon as I power wash and pressure wash this motor, and you know, oven clean it and do all that good stuff. And it'll probably be Ford red again, because it'd eat everything off, or it'd be bare cast iron. But alright, so that's what we got here. I'm gonna let this video go here. And got a cold Dr. Pepper. Well, it was cold. And get this front to rear brake line back on, and we will be set.